This week, Rabbi Bar-Hayim mentioned something. He was talking in Hebrew about Jewish war ethics. If you haven't seen that video yet, why not? Oh, good. So, but whatever, it's a very nice video. I tried to make sure to listen to. I should listen to the sheer live, but it's harder for me to do that. At least I listened to recording a day later. I could maybe listen to it a little bit faster, so I could save time and I could do stuff, while I could multitask. So when it's recording, I can multitask. So we have here a fine point on something he mentioned. He mentioned the Gemara in Bava Basra in passing. He was talking about the ethic of the rule about who you're supposed to kill in battle, in war. You go to Bava Basra, the bottom of Kaf Aleph Amid Aleph, slash Kaf Aleph Amid Base, the top thereof. And discusses it discusses here a mistake apparently that Yoav made. Okay, Yoav, who was King David's number two, he was at one point basically the power behind the throne. It says he was a Sar Tzava, and later in his reign, King David tried to remove Yoav, and he could not. He realized his political power, just like at the beginning of his reign, his political power rested in Yoav, and he was the strength behind the throne. So too, later, after Avshalom's revolt, King David really had it in for Yoav, but realized also he needed him and he couldn't do anything about it. So he left it to King Solomon to take out Yoav eventually, bring him to justice. And also, it was a little bit difficult. Yoav was technically his older nephew. Okay, David was the youngest. David had a sister, Tzuruya, older sister. We don't know where the sister fits in among all the older brothers of Jesse, but somewhere in there. And her sons were what is it? Asael and Yoav and the rest of them, the Bnei Tzuruya. Okay, so I might be getting that wrong. By the way, they were major characters in David's, I guess, military system. Okay? They were the three higher ups. One was killed by Avner, and that's why Yoav had it in for him. Okay, there was originally three. One was killed by Avner, so Yoav took revenge on Avner, and David thought that was incorrect. What Avner did was, in the heat of battle, okay, he was a rodef, so it was okay for Avner, technically speaking, to kill Yoav's brother, but Yoav taking revenge on Avner under a flag of truce was not fine. Okay, it was considered murder. And the same thing he killed, I think it was Asael. He killed him, or Amasa. Sorry, it was Amasa. I think he killed. Someone will correct me. I have to look this up because the names all start with ayins and it's confusing. Okay, so it says here a diuk that Rabbi Bar-Hayim pointed out, and others did. He wasn't the first one. He says that Kohen and Nazir was the first one, and Rav Tzuriel pointed this out also regarding the idea that we have to kill even women and children in battle when we deal with certain enemy nations. Now, there is this idea that we've said many times that whoever takes up the mantle of Amalek has a din of Amalek. You have to treat them like Amalek, right? We've heard this diuk. It's a diuk in the Rambam, and there's many sources, not just in the Rambam, for this idea that whichever nation it may be, could be Nazi Germany, Stalinist Russia, modern day Islamofascists, and others throughout history who decide, you know what, we're going to destroy the Jewish people, so they become Amalek. And I've pointed out that indeed there is room for such a thing. To what extent? To the extent that you have to go out of your way to destroy them. You have to neutralize them if you want to live peacefully. And that's why we have commandment of the sages, or at least an enactment of the sages, to remind us about Amalek every single year on a regular basis. Okay, the Rambam says, technically speaking, you can fulfill the commandment to remember Amalek by remembering Amalek or reading the passage. Yet the sages enacted that we take out a Sefer Torah once a year and make a big deal about it and call it a special Shabbos where all the men have to hear this commandment. Remember what Amalek did to you and wipe out Amalek and don't forget. It must be because we are still threatened by Amalek. And every generation, they rise up to destroy us. And every generation, there's an Amalek we have to destroy. But I've pointed out many times, because the Rambam says this explicitly in the Sefer HaMitzvos and the Mor Nevuchim, you cannot then go and say that, heyot, that Nazi Germany, they're Amalek, being Nazi Germany is Amalek, so I got to kill men, women, and children in Nazi Germany. Because the Rambam says, very clearly based on the Talmud, that this law, that you have to kill men, women, and children, specifically of Amalekites or Canaanites, right, applies to everybody who may be Amalek. Okay, sorry, I should say that better. Okay, there is this rule with Amalek exceptionally. Normally in battle, you just kill all the fighting age males. Women and children are spared, taken as captives. Kill all the men. But for Amalek, if it's a war against Amalek, you have to kill all the men and all the women and all the children. So people make this deal with them and say that, because Nazi Germany, they're Amalek, kill the men, women, and children. I point out the Rambam does not allow for that. Okay, the Rambam does not allow for that. Also with Canaanites, with regards to other nations, you spare the women and children. But Canaanites, it says, once you're in battle with them, kill the men, women, and the children. And I said, even though you could say, well, Canaanites are any national group with whom we're fighting for control of Eretz Yisrael. Let's say Greeks in the negative third century, right? Or Persians. Okay, they're not the seven Canaanite nations. Rambam says there are no more any Canaanites. But if some or other they have a foothold in the land of Israel and they're competing with us for control of the land, or they're trying to drive us out or exterminate us. So because they're now like the Canaanites, our national competitors, so now we have to kill all of them, men, women, and children. I pointed out that the Rambam does not allow for that. Yet many have applied this. Because those people become like Canaanites, they are national competitors for Eretz Yisrael, or because those people are like the Amalekites, they're trying to destroy us, just like the Amalekites in Nazi Germany. Now we kill men, women, and children of them. I say there's no room in the Rambam for such a thing, and he actually said explicitly, he wrote explicitly not to make such a deal. You can't go that far. I believe, yes, we have to prosecute the wars against those who are competing with us for Israel, or those who are trying to wipe us out, just like Amalek and Canaan, but only to the extent that we have to take it to heart, that we really have to fight them. But still, we cannot kill women and children. They're taken as captives. Okay? That's, well, there. If combatants, of course, anybody takes up, even today, if chas v'shalom, we said this, a child is a rodef. The child is loaded with a bomb, right? He's been forced into a suicide bombing. You take out the child. That child is a rodef of yours. We saw this. Even a baby's a rodef. Remember the Rambam's rule. A woman is having trouble giving birth. The baby's a rodef to her. You have to abort the baby. The baby's a rodef. Oh, the baby's a baby, and the baby is not even an active rodef. He has no kavanah to do such a thing. Still, a rodef is a rodef, and that's why the rabbis paskin, and we mentioned this at the beginning of the war. Okay, all the rabbis who are in the know say the terrorists strap a bomb to a train load or a plane load of people, or have our human hostages as human shields. They're already considered dead. They're gavra katila, and they are now the rodfim of us. If it means that all the bad guys, the Rishayim, get to escape because they have 300 or 300 of our own hostages strapped to their backs as they're running away, so we shoot them. They are technically rodfim, okay? Even though they have no intent to, and they have negative intent. Still, they're like rodfim. This is a very important halacha. So recently, like I said, it was just this week, the rabbi mentioned that there's this Gemara which seems to imply that when you're engaged in battle with a group that's like Amalek, they're basically standing for Amalek or some other reason that you're fighting with them, maybe you would have to kill all the men, women, and children. Indeed, there is such a Gemara that implies this, and that's the Gemara we have in front of us, Bava Basra. I'm going to move back one, it's the bottom of Kaf Aleph Amid Aleph. At the bottom, it says, in the lesson they're trying to teach here is that the Malami Tinokos, the one who teaches the kids how to read Tanakh, should be very exact. He has to read it right. Actually, it's a machlokas rishon how to interpret it. Is that the Malamid has to actually make sure to pronounce everything exactly as it's written so that the children understand, or when the children say it back, when they do their recitations, he has to make sure they said it right and not let them get away with saying the wrong thing. Even though he himself said the right thing, you can't let them get away with saying the wrong thing, which is why I try to teach kids, how to read a little bit of Torah. I tell them, that tough doesn't have a dot in it, so it's not a tough, and they just don't get it. It's really difficult. That's a vet, that's a vav. They're different. It's really difficult to teach kids at this stage, but you have to stick to it. Or today, I told a rav, it was just, we were talking about this in learning Chavos Vavis, but no, it was something else. It was some Rebbe Nachman for some Musar. And I pointed out, you have to read, there's a Dagesh Chazak. What's Dagesh Chazak? How does it work? I said, technically speaking, if you have the word Shabbath, it's pronounced Shavbath. There's a vet that closes the previous syllable, and then the next bet starts next syllable, Shavbath. That's why you can spell Dove Bear in Yiddish. If somebody spelled this one word with one bet, Duber, like it's Yiddish, Dove Bear. So it's one word. There's one bet. The bet works for this word, and the bet works for that word. It's like two syllables. The bet with a dot. It's really technically pronounced. If you have a bet with a dot, the first bet is weak. Dove Bear. Just like if you have the word Malay, the Dagesh Lamed, Malay. It's a tzivui. It's like there's two lamets there. Rav Tzuriel has a video about this. Okay, so it's the one time we did a video presentation together. So his is the first video, and mine is the second. Okay, yeah, it was a great privilege.
Was that why some I've seen in some Sephardi sitters when there's a division was up, they have just two letters.
Yeah, it's to tell you that it's two letters. So he didn't know this, and the rabbi who does teach the kids how to read Torah, okay, one of the school rabbis who's also even does recitation with the kids even here every day during the summer when they don't have school, was like, yes, that's the whole point. I'm trying to teach them the Geish Chazak. Good, Baruch Hashem. So the lesson here is that Yoav didn't know how to read, apparently, the mitzvah, and he got a mistake because the word centers around, we're going to see the word spelled Zayin Kaf Reish. It's a joke. I asked someone, what is Yud Bet Nun Hey spelled? And they say Yivneh. I said, no, Yibaneh. Yibaneh and Yivneh are spelled the exact same way in the Torah, right? So how do you know which one it is? Tradition. So it says here that in passing, it's talking about, in the book of Malachim, it talks about how there were those who escaped Edom. What happened? David conquered Edom. That's the land of Esav's descendants. Now he conquered it. He did a lot. He killed a lot of men there. Yet Edom still existed as a nation. It says that there was one individual, Hadad or Adad, Adomi, who might even be mentioned in Sefer Bereshis, by the way. And we've talked about that before. So he was of royal stock, and he was a survivor of David's conquest of Edom. And he ran away from Yoav, who David had sent to, do the conquering. And eventually he became a thorn in Solomon's side when God decided it was time to teach Solomon a lesson. So he lost a little bit of his control of his empire. And it says here at the end of Solomon's reign that this Hadad fellow basically found refuge in Egypt and even was given, a privileged place within the Egyptian royal family. He got to marry the king of Egypt at the time's sister-in-law, who might also be mentioned, by the way, he pointed out herself in Sefer Bereshis. And eventually he made his way back to Edom to begin a popular revolt, just like the Arameans eventually revolted against David. And they became a greater kingdom, a more powerful kingdom by the next generation. They were basically the ones calling the shots and adjudicating between, fights between northern Israel and southern Judah, okay, or just intimidating them. They're the ones who could push everybody around. So it says here that Kishesheth Chodashim Yashav Sham Yoav V'Chol Yisrael Ad Hitrit Kol Zachar BeEdom. Okay, Joab had tarried in Edom with all of Israel, means all the army, for 6 months until he had cut off all of the males, the fighting males in Edom. Now the Gemara says here, Ki Atha L'Kamei de David, when Joab came back to David after this long operation, Amarle, he said to him, it's going to be David said to Joab, my time avadatachi. Why did you do this? Now, what's the why did you do this? Now, Rashi says, everybody interprets it like Rashi. Shalo haraktas on the kavos. You killed the zachars, you didn't kill the kavos. Why were you killing why were you killing women? You spent so much time in Edom killing males, but not females. So he said to him, Joab answered, because it says in Torah, Timchet et Zachar Amalek. It says kill the males. He read Zachar wrong. He read Zecher wrong. By the way, the difference between Zecher and Zecher in this case doesn't matter because it's all one word. The Zecher doesn't change the meaning. Matter of fact, the word is Zecher. Or sorry, it is Zecher. It's not supposed to be written with a segel. It's in all our books. It's with a Seirei. The significant difference is between Zecher and Zachar. Zachar means males. It's also Milran, not Mil-El. And it's a kametz, not segol, Seirei, or Seirei, segol, grammatical equivalents, whatever it is. So apparently you've read this wrong. So David said, Amar Levan on Zecher Karidon. You were supposed to say Zecher, means wipe out all the Amalekites. Now here's a question. There are those who give a different answer, by the way, than the one that the rabbi mentioned. Here, King David is basically saying, and Yoav, they're basically saying that the treatment of Edom was supposed to be like the treatment of Amalek entirely. Wait, isn't Amalek just a subset of Edom? I looked this up in Sefer Bereshis. I found that Amalek was just one of the major groups of the Bnei Edom. And like the Rambam says, the whole point of having Parshas Vayishlach in existence is so that you don't make this mistake that you dafka go and wipe out Amalek and not any other of Esav's descendants. They're not supposed to be wiped out. It's only this particular group descended from Eliphaz ben Esav and not, let's say, from Reuel ben Esav or the rest of Esav's 12 tribes. By the way, Esav produced 12 tribes, just like Ishmael, and just like Yoktan, and just like the Bnei Keturah, divided into 12 tribes, right? You pointed that out many times. And just like Nahor had his own 12 sons. Everybody connected to Avram Avinu has 12 tribes descending from him. So and sometimes you could read it that Esav has maybe 13. There's ways you count it. Okay. Why 13? Maybe it's 12. The answer, Amalek is set aside. Or just like Yaakov Avinu had 12 tribes, but it depends how you count. Sometimes you count Levi, and sometimes you count Yosef as one. And other times you count not Levi and Yosef as two. So too, you find that phenomenon among the Bnei Esav. Okay, it's part of the bracha. Okay, Yaakov and Esav are twins. Either way, here King David says, "Why didn't you kill the females in Edom? Because I was told just kill the zachars." This Gemara seems to equate the treatment of Edom with that of Amalek specifically. Okay, that's what this Gemara seems to say. The way Rashi reads and others read it. So Rav Tzuriel pointed out the Kohen on Nazir's diuk that sometimes when you fight, let's say, a rival nation because they're really trying to get you. They were rivals in this case for whatever reason. Edom really deserved to be punished well by King David and Joab, so they got the Amalek treatment. Joab should have also, killed everybody, not just the males. That's how they read this. And Joab eventually in the ensuing Gemara actually apparently went to his Rebbe, his Malamed, and gave him the bidness. Why did you tell me to read this pasuk wrong? It's supposed to be Zecher Amalek, not Zachar Amalek. Okay, fine. That's the main point of the Gemara, that the Malamed is supposed to know what he is teaching the kids and be medayik. Now, I'm pointing out that this is not the only technical understanding of this Gemara. Why? Because it's a major problem the Maharshal points out. When the Torah says Timchet Zecher Amalek, like the Rambam says, it means Amalek and not the rest of Edom, not to Reuel and Olivama and the rest of those Edomite groups. As a matter of fact, it even says what does it say in Sefer Devarim? Anybody know? It says you're not supposed to make war. Moshe Rabbeinu was told, don't start up with whom? Ammon, Moav, and Edom. What does it say? Okay, right? If there was such a big deal that we should treat Edom like the rest of Amalek, like Amalek itself, why is it that we read Parshas Chukas, Moshe Rabbeinu sends a message to the king of Edom, can we please pass through your land? We don't want to fight you. We want to pay you and stuff. Kol Amar Achicha Yisrael, we're brothers and all that. Acting like that to Edom as opposed to Amalek seems to be kind of weird. Yet here, the Gemara seems to say that Edom deserved the Amalek treatment. That's what the assumption is in the Gemara, right? The way Rashi reads it. That's the way you read it. Why do you do this in Edom? Well, I was supposed to wipe out all of Zachar Amalek. No, you're supposed to wipe out the Zecher Amalek. You should have killed all the Edomites. That's what the Gemara seems to imply the way they read it. I'm going to point out to you, I'll read the pasuk in Devarim. It says here, hold on. You're now passing through the gvul of the Bnei Esav who live in Seir. By the way, in Moshe Rabbeinu's time, Amalek lived apart from the rest of the Edomites. The Edomites, for the most part, lived in what's called Seir and Sedei Edom, whereas Amalek lived in the Negev and in other places. Okay, Amalek Yoshev B'Negev and towards Paran and Chavilon, places like that, more toward Yishmael. Okay, so it says your brothers, the Bnei Esav. Kind of weird. Amalek isn't called brothers. Bnei Esav are called brothers. Al tith garuvam. Ki lo atem lechem yartzam ad bidrach kaf ragel. Ki rishal Esav nathat yatar seir. You're not actually supposed to conquer Esav. Don't start up fights with Esav. That's their place. You have your place. There's supposed to be a nice fine line between Israel and Esav. They're not supposed to actually be fighting each other. Okay? So why is this Gemara saying what it says? Because I with all due respect, like I said, Rambam definitely didn't read the Gemara this way because the Rambam said twice, don't apply Amalek treatment to Bnei Edom. So what is the Gemara here saying? Rashi is adding words that I think that if you remember, like we saw last week, you take out those Rashi words and then you can read it like Rambam did, which is as follows. Okay? So what was Yoav's understanding? When you fight Amalek, you're only supposed to kill the Zacharim, only the males, right? That's certain. That's what the Gemara says. Yoav had the mistaken impression that instead of saying Zecher, all of Amalek, all the memory of Amalek, which includes everybody, you're only supposed to kill the Zachar of Amalek. If the halacha is for Amalekites, you only kill the males, right? And yet you let the women and children survive of Amalek. Call the Homer with other nations, you let the women and children survive. Okay? And by the way, it says that the halacha we saw in this week's parsha. The Sifrei says it when they attacked Midian. Midian wanted to kill all the Jews. The revenge on Midian also was kasher tzivah Hashem Moshe vayitzbu al Midian. The Sifrei says, Mefarshim points out, the Rambam says explicitly, they even allowed the Midianites to escape. They only besieged them on three sides. One side to escape. Why? Because that's a halacha. Even when you fight a milchemes mitzvah, you leave the fourth side open so that those who want to flee, not for another day, to not retreat, but those who want to flee for their lives without taking weapons can go. Let them go to like some of the Phoenicians, the Girgashites did. Let them go to Tunis, what they used to call Africa. Let them found Carthage. Okay, let them leave. Let them take their Molech Avodah Zarah and go there, which they did. Okay, but it's not our job. We don't have a Carthaginian war with the Girgashites later in history. The Girgashites had nothing to do with the Jews. They didn't pose a threat to us. Let the Romans fight them. That's why they had Punic wars, right? Not punitive wars, Punic wars. So Yoav thought you only have to kill the males of Amalek, and the women and children are to be spared. So call the Homer. You fight another group like Edom or I don't know Egyptians. You also don't kill the women and children. And David's response to that was he was mistaken. All Amalekites had to be killed. And as for other nationalities, the rule is the women and our children is kept as slaves only after the fighting. We don't care if they become collateral damage. The problem was, Joab thought, when you fight Amalek, you kill the males, right? And whatever, women and children, they happen to get hurt. That's not our problem. But when you fight another group, let's say just Edom, you killed all the males, but you have to go out of your way to spare the women and children. You see the distinction?
Okay.
When you fight Amalek, you thought Amalek means kill the man. And women and children, I don't care, whatever, let the, collateral damage. But when you fight someone else, when you fight Egypt, when you fight Persia, when you fight China, you have to kill all the males. It says, but your dafka is supposed to spare the women and children. Go out of your way to spare them. And for that, David said to him was, no, you're wrong. And that's why the emphasis of this pasuk is Shisha Chodashim. It took 6 months. That's not the way a real Jewish battle happens. The Jewish battle is fought in God's name, l'shem shemayim, and God gives them siyata d'shmaya. It is quick. Okay, really, David said, no, Amalek, you kill everybody, no questions. And when you fight other nations, you kill all the males, and you don't care about collateral damage. At the end, when the dust settles, if you have women and children as captives, they're shalal. They're part of the booty, like we saw at this week's parsha. You're not supposed to go out of your way to save them. And by the way, this fits with the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi in Rosh Hashanah points this out. Okay, that King David's problem was that he is held liable for this. This is not to their credit that this war took so long. What's the exact words there? I wrote this over here. In Yerushalmi, for instance, this 6 month war suggested as being deducted from David's reign precisely because it was done wrong. Was it, if you calculate King David's reign, it says that he reigned for 40 years. Yet it says he reigned 7.5 years and 33 years. 7.5 plus 33 adds up to 40.5. Yeah. So they say, wait, where does the half year go? And there's Gemara there in Yerushalmi, in the beginning of Rosh Hashanah, right in the first, Mishnah. Well, the Gemara on the first Mishnah, or sorry, the Talmud on the first halacha says that it tries to offer reasons where David's time went. Why does the Torah or the Navi discredit David for half a year's worth of reign? So this is one of those, that he was not keeping halacha properly during these 6 months. These 6 months were deducted from him. Okay, so that is basically what to say that David had this strange selective vendetta. Okay, or more like it was Yoav who had this. Okay, Yoav, for some reason, when he went in front of David, David said to him, "Where have you been gone for 6 months?" He said, "Because I was very meticulous. I learned that even with Amalek, you don't go out of your way to kill the women and children. So when I was fighting in Edom, I went out of my way not to kill the women and children. I tried to minimize collateral damage among the women and children." And David had head slapping. No, that's not how you read it. First, Amalek, you kill everybody. And with the other groups, I don't care about the women and children. They take them afterwards. And by the way, this is also a lesson about today now. What's the problem? Why is the war been going on so long in Gaza? Why is it ridiculous? I just told you some guys spent 200 days in Gaza. The last time they conquered Gaza took 6 days. Not even 6 days, a 6-day war, right? Part of the problem with this prolonged war and all the prolonged wars that the regime subjects people like us to, and more importantly, people like you, the soldiers, is that they're too selective. They have this Yoav idea that But we have to go out of our way to protect the non-combatants. That was considered a sin. Okay. And by the way, like the rabbi pointed out, it says why they go there originally to bury the dead. Bury the dead. Yeah. Oh, there too many Jews died in that battle. Too many Jewish people needed proper burial because they died, being in Edom, because they extended their stay there. They're supposed to kill everybody and leave. Just take it for themselves. No, the problem was they went slow because they had this strange halachic idea that they're supposed to have, spare their sword a little bit. And by the way, that's what Yoav then tells his Rebbe, says, the one who spares his sword, arur moneach harbo midam. Okay, because you taught me wrong, I was not killing enough as I should have. Okay, so yeah, we have to learn this lesson, and that's what I think. That's why, I guess, to sum this up, I don't think you should read this like Rashi, because Rambam definitely doesn't read the Gemara like Rashi because of things he explicitly said elsewhere that we put up the information there. And this is one of those where I respectfully disagree with saying that Rabbi Bar-Hayim said. I don't know if he personally says it, but I would, if the Kohen and Nazir were here, if Suriel were still here, I wish I could argue this with him. It's now been 12 months since he passed, but not his yahrzeit. Why not? Yeah, he died at the end of last year. So now that Tammuz came, so it's been 12 months. So they stopped the Kaddish, and the Avelus is over. Even though we said not to have Avelus, we discussed it. Suriel didn't want them to have Avelus for him. Period. He canceled it, but no one listened to him. But now the Avelus is officially over. We're going to observe his yahrzeit on the 25th of which is which is in a few weeks. Okay, 4 weeks from now. But okay, I'm not going to start getting crying, but. Okay, let's compose ourselves. Either way, so I think that this was mistaken. Okay, the Gemara, you don't have to read every Gemara like Rashi. You can read Gemaras like Rambam. Remember, I said to the guys in yeshiva, you read Gemara with Rashi, you understand how Rashi understood the Gemara. You read the Halacha with the Rambam, you understand how Rambam understood the Gemara also. And Rambam didn't use Rashi's commentary when he read the Gemara. Okay, that's a fact. Rashi's commentary was new. As a matter of fact, Rambam specifically mentions what might be Rashi's commentary one place in the Parish of Mishnayos to knock it down. Okay, right. Rashi's pshat and what it means in the Mishnah that Chizkiyahu hid the Sefer Refuos. He says it means X, Y, and Z, and not like an opinion I heard. And that opinion he heard, which he knocks down, is explicitly Rashi's opinion. And Rambam only occurs in Tosfos like 3 times. There's like a trivia question. If you're real Bucky, I always forget the answer. Rambam is mentioned by the Tosafists. Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon says this and that. He was a contemporary of Rabbeinu Tam, a younger contemporary. Okay, so there you go. I hope there are any questions about this. I think that the way, yeah, please.
So we say that Amalek is a descendant of Esav, but we see when Kedar Omer and his friends are coming to conquer Israel.
Yes, the Amaleki.
The Sedeh Amaleki. So is that just an anachronistic reference? Is that just some anachronistic reference, or?
Yeah, I pointed out that whole parsha is full of anachronistic references, right? It says Vayirdof Adon, but the place only became the name of Don, I don't know, about 500 years later or so, right? When the Danites conquered after Yeshua's time. So yeah, it might be anachronistic, or more importantly, sometimes Amalek, or like any other proper noun in the Torah, refers to many people. Shaul. The most famous Shaul is the king, right? How many people before that are called Shaul? Well, there was a king of Edom, and one of Shimon's sons was Shaul. Or Shmuel, the first famous Shmuel is the Navi Shmuel, right? But there's a few Shmuels in Sefer Bamidbar. And there's a guy, Yigal ben Yosef, in Sefer Bamidbar also. A Yosef. So some names are there. Esav may very well have named Eliphaz may very well have named his concubine's son Amalek, Al Shem, that area where they lived. Okay, so Timchez Zecher Amalek, it's talking about this specific subgroup of Esav, and Sedeh Amaleki, however, is maybe some other group, or it could just be anachronistic. It's not a problem that the fact that Al Shem Sofo, something written later in history. Rav Sharkey was just putting out a shir about this. Go look at it. He put it up today. Mi'arach at Torah. There's some anachronisms that are actually perhaps later additions to our Torah. Things from Joshua's time made it into the Torah. Okay, so it's not such a problem. By the way, like I said, don't read this Gemara like Rashi did, and then you don't have a diuk that's against the halacha as the Rambam has it very explicitly. So there you go. Like I said, I read this more differently, and I think that you read like the Rambam also, you understand what King David was objecting to from Yoav. Yoav. The point is that King David was basically saying, why did this take so long? Okay, not and that because that's what the pasuk says, and that's what it seems to be when you read Yerushalmi. This war was exceptional because what emphasizes 6-month war. No other war we read about how long it took. Okay, the problem was the 6-month war, and why? Because he had this mistaken idea about how to treat Amalek, and that affected how he would then treat Bnei Esav. Not that he it equated Bnei Esav with the rest of Amalek, because the Rambam says basically don't do a thing like that. That's not what the halacha ever meant.